Also doing well, shares in Nokia. Let's turn to the telecoms equipment manufacturer. Nokia shares are soaring after it reported first quarter sales that beat estimates. The new CEO, Pekka Lundmark, has embarked on a restructuring plan that slashes costs and steps up research and development. That's as Nokia seeks to take back market share and catch up with 5G rivals. I'm pleased to say Pekka Lundmark joins us now, the CEO of Nokia. Pekka, very good to speak to you once again. It seems that your numbers were much higher, in particular on some of the margins, much higher than the market had anticipated. What did you manage to deliver on that the market had not seen?
Yeah, it was a great quarter. We are seeing growing demand in 5G when operators are increasing their investments, but also because of the pandemic, we have seen a lot of increase in network demand for fixed connections, optical connections driven by remote work and so on. We had 9% comparable currency top-line growth, which is really good for the first quarter.
You talk about remaining alert to the limited semiconductor availability, but you say that the chip shortage is not material. How are you able to navigate around this and to make sure that this is not a material risk?
You know, it is a real shortage in the market. It's not driven only by our sector, but it's driven by automotive, electric vehicles, data centers, consumer gadgets. Hey, look, it's a fight out there, and you have to be in daily contact with your suppliers. You need to make sure that you are important to them, and I'm really happy our people, our organization did a great job.
You did a great job. I mean, what dictates who gets what, though? Because we've heard from various sectors, from telecom equipment to healthcare to autos, and they all want chips. What's dictating who's getting the chips at this point, Pekka?
Well, ultimately, you go back to supply chain management, you go back to relationship management with the suppliers. When there is a shortage on the market, it is things like how important you are in the big picture, how strong your relationships are, and how you manage expectations.
Let me ask you about the 5G performance that you've delivered. The loss of the Verizon 5G contract to Samsung, that was something that many analysts were citing as something to watch as a negative in your earnings. Now, clearly, you've impressed the market, but how has that loss of the Verizon contract impacted on the company?
There was some impact from that in Q1, but the interesting thing is that despite that, we had a great quarter in North American market. And what I would like to highlight is that we continue to work with Verizon in many different segments. And during the quarter, we published 5-year 5G deals with both T-Mobile and AT&T. So I'm pretty optimistic about the North American market in the big picture.
Yeah, and let me ask you about market share, because we speak to Ericsson. Ericsson keeps talking about market share growth. That's happening at the expense of somebody. What are you seeing on market share?
We expect to have 25 to 27% market share this year in 4G and 5G. That's according to our expectations. We are increasing our market share in Europe at the moment. In most other parts of the world, it is more or less stable. But then in the network infrastructure business, which is fixed connections and optical networks, IP routing, we are actually continuously increasing our market share thanks to the technology strengths that we have there.
And how does that apply to China, Pekka? Barclays analysts ahead of this earnings statement suggesting maybe you're losing market share there. Any update on the Chinese business?
We have a pretty strong position in China. We are working with our customers in many different segments. Our 5G market share is low in China, but we definitely have targets to participate in the upcoming tendering rounds that will take place later this year.
It's interesting that just a couple of months ago, we were all here at Bloomberg TV talking a lot about retail investors, the increased role of retail investors. And I mentioned this to you, Pekka, because, of course, on certain Reddit forums, we were seeing certain stocks being picked as something that retail investors should focus in on. And one of them was yours, and you saw a bump up in the share price. I wonder how much that impacts on a CEO or the management of a business more broadly when you see that kind of thing happen. Is it a nice bit of spotlight or an unwanted distraction?
Of course, it's always good as a CEO if there is interest to your stock. But hey, look, the only thing we can do is to do as good a job as possible. We had Capital Markets Day a few weeks ago where we laid out our 3-year strategy, and this quarter that we now published is a great start to that 3-year journey, and ultimately then a good job that we do hopefully is something that will be appreciated by all our shareholders, both institutional and private shareholders.
Can I just ask you briefly then, Pekka, about pricing pressures? We talked about the chip market, but are you concerned about the prices of imports? Are you confident in your ability to set prices?
Well, of course, ultimately your own pricing power is dictated by your technology strength, and I'm pretty optimistic about how that is developing at the moment. Then the other side of the equation is, of course, the fact that the semiconductor market is tight, and there are examples of semiconductors where we are seeing prices go up at the moment because of the shortage. So it is always a balance between these two dimensions.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us, Pekka. Really good to speak to you. Pekka Lundmark, the Nokia CEO. Thanks very much for joining us.